Good evening. My name is Kevin, and I'll be your trainer for this particular session on DevNet combined. So here we are going to discuss a lot of things on how to automate our networks. Okay, and this will be starting from a basic session, and to like in the ongoing days, we will move on to the advanced parts as well for automation. So thank you everyone for joining in. So as I mentioned, my name is Kevin. I've been in this networking field for almost 10 years now. I mostly work with the base codes on CCNA, CCNP based sessions, and as well as automation. So sessions like DevAsk, DevCore, etc. So in today's session, we'll be discussing a little bit about our Cisco's DevNet that was basically introduced in 2020 with the idea to move our entire thing towards automation. So now everybody knows pretty much everything is moving on to AI and automation and everything. So this is a step taken by Cisco to help you with the same on their networking devices as well. So I hope some of you might have joined in for our demo session earlier. So regardless of that, today we are going to start fresh. We are going to discuss from the basics of Cisco DevNet. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Before that, just give me a second. We have close to 15 students. Great. So yes, let's go ahead and start with the session. I'm not going into much of an introductory session because this is going to be a long time. Right, like we'll be having like close to 2 months, so we can just make it a bit interactive. And when you guys have any doubts, please feel free to ask. During that time, you can introduce yourself. That would be better to everyone to remember everybody. So yes, let's go ahead. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. So yes, as I mentioned, today's session, we are going to just go through the basics of it. And our topic is Cisco DevNet on from basics to advanced of network automation. So the whole DevNet course is basically designed to help students to prepare for our DevNet associate as well as a professional level certification, as well as for your personal requirements. Most of you, I believe, are working in from working professionals. So it might actually help you to update yourself there as well. So here, okay, Shibam, you're not able to hear my voice. What about others? Is there any issue with my voice? Because, okay, so in that case, let me just check.
There is no issue. I can hear you properly.
Yeah, your voice is audible.
So the people who are not able to hear might want to check their internet. If there is an issue over that, try to move on to alternate internet if possible. Okay. Please check on that. I'll just type it here as well. Okay. So please do verify that. And yeah, we are going to go ahead with the session. And if you are still not able to hear, you might want to check your Zoom settings as well for your internet. Sorry, for your speaker settings. So yes, as I was saying, so today's will be kind of like a basic introductory class. So don't worry about this. Okay, and this is a recorded session, so you'll be able to view the video later inside your portal as well. Okay, so let's go ahead. So in this course, we are going to do a lot of things. Like we'll be working on the theory mostly first, and after that we have labs which can actually help you to automate all these devices and everything. So you can set up your network on a practical level. Then we'll discuss, go through things like APIs, like Ansible, Puppet, and like working on model-driven programmability concepts. Okay. Great, Shailesh, great. So yes, as I mentioned, we'll be going through different concepts like APIs, MDP, that is model-driven programmability, which we'll be discussing about YAML concepts, XML, those kinds of stuff. So some of this might be new terms to you, some of this might not be new terms to you, but no worries. We'll start from the basics first. So yes, let's go ahead and start. The first topic or the first module that we are going to cover when it comes to our DevNet session is how to practice like modern software development methods. So here we are going to discuss about the basic ideas on how these APIs are affecting our software design and what all components we are using inside there and what exactly is this API, because most of you might be familiar with the term, but not exactly sure what this thing actually is. And then we'll discuss about a little bit on Git and different methods of software development, etc. So yes, let's go ahead. This is practically the course content that we'll be covering. So since this is a huge session, like we have combined two different courses into this, like DevAsk as well as DevCo, which together makes this a CCNP level course. Okay, so these are some. This is practically the order in which things of the topics that we are going to cover. We have practicing modern software development, which we are starting today, and you can see the rest of the sessions as well. So we totally have around 20 topics that we have to cover. So this is the first 10. If you want, you can just take a screenshot or you can just check in the recorded video once it's available. And this, and this is the second set, like automating. So this is kind of like, let's say, the advanced level where we will be doing a lot more practicals compared to the first half. Okay, so here we are practically inside the core part of our networking side, like securing application data, that is security, understanding distributed system, modeling data with YAML, etc. So these are some of the most important topics that we are going to cover. The first half, it's kind of like a basic introductory, like a transition from your CCNA side, that's a basic networking, towards automation. Okay, so yes, let's go ahead and start. So as an introduction, as I mentioned, the first topic that we're going to cover is practicing modern software development. So yes. So nowadays, the thing is like software development is kind of like a huge field, like it's a broad field. And there are many different types of softwares that you actually encounter daily. For example, let's say you have your WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram, like social media stuff like that. And what else? You have your UPI apps, which helps you to basically do all kinds of payments. Then you have your shopping apps, Amazon, Flipkart. So there are a lot of different types of applications, and basically all these applications are different softwares which are supported inside your particular type of phone. It can be Android, iOS, or even Linux-based phones. So all are possible. So we have to compare the firmware running, let's say, for example, I can say like the firmware that is running on your car. For example, if you have a map, GPS, etc., that car, and at the same time you have applications on your phone, each of them having their own specific purpose. Okay, so like all of these are softwares, like it's piece of codes, but at the same time, this has their own types of specific purpose which we are using to get that particular work done. So similarly, the development process for each type of softwares also has its own specifics. For example, let's say mobile application development is nothing like writing an embedded programming. Yet, the thing here is that there are also few similarities when we are coming across all these ones. Okay, so when it comes to our software development industry, Ashad, yes, go ahead. Okay,
Guys, I can see there are a lot of people who not connected with the mic. So check your mic. There is no issue from our side. Okay, when you will continue.
sure. Apparently, I think they might be having some issues with the speaker. Like when you're setting up Zoom, you might have to check that as well. Um, they are not able to hear me. So mic or speaker, you have to check your audio system, all of you, please. So yes, I'm going to continue with the session. So as I mentioned, inside this software development industry, there are a few of these trends that came up in the last maybe let's say 5 to 10 years. Okay. So for example, web applications. We had websites before, but web applications is something new. So these basically replace your traditional, let's say, fat clients like your Microsoft Office 365, etc. Like these applications take a lot of processing requirements inside your system because these applications are present inside your system, right? And since this Office 365 and all takes a lot of data to actually work, or it takes a lot of processing power to actually work, that processing power, everything will be taken in from your system, right? Instead, imagine a web application which can do all of this. So all you have to do is provide the URL to that particular website on your browser, and this processing power is taken from some other server. The only thing you'll be have to do is okay, somebody else. Okay, something else is coming up. Just give me a second, guys. Okay, so yes, that's done. So as I was saying, if you're using a web application, the thing is like you'll just have to interface it with that particular application on your browser. All the processing power, everything will be done from another site. Like there will be a server or there will be some other cloud storage where everything is stored, and that process is done over there. So this basically makes it much easier as well as your resources are being saved. Okay. So this is one of the things that came up. And similarly, let's say huge proliferation of mobile application, which basically means like a booming of mobile applications. Like there are a lot of different applications that you have right now instead of your websites. For example, I actually mentioned earlier Facebook. So earlier, when you want to access Facebook on phone, you have to go to browser. It takes too much data, right? For exchange, like if you want to click a like or if you want to do any action, post something, the exchange of data, the bandwidth required was more. So that was replaced by the help of mobile applications. On these Android applications, you have small clients, like basic clients. It takes like what 40 MB. You have applications like that, which makes it much easier to use this particular interface or that particular service. Okay, so okay, me voice. Hold on, let's just Yes, as I was saying, so these applications makes it much easier uh, for all of us to use these different services. The reason being, like, you don't have to open a browser, you don't have to type in that particular URL, you don't even have to remember that URL. All you have to do is find the application, open it, and you are able to use it. And these kind of applications started booming up. Even for the same service, you have multiple applications. For example, WhatsApp, you have some more kind of WhatsApps, you have your original, then you have WhatsApp business. All of this helps you basically to do the same thing. Uh, oh, yes, definitely. The reason, okay, I got a question from Sadhana. Installing an application can be FB or something like that. It makes it much easier to using FB on any browser. Reason being, like I can say, I'm talking from a technical point of view. Okay, not just our usage. Like for example, if you're actually using a browser, what happens? You have to paste this URL on that browser. And if you're doing that, what basically happens that you're sending a request to a server, and that server is providing you with all the data that is required. But at the same time, when you're using an application, the thing is that that application already has a lot of the base data, like what kind of template this information has to be displayed in. So those details does not need to be exchanged. Instead, they can basically exchange whatever data that needs to be presented over there. So this template, what are options, everything are basically present inside your phone itself, which basically means you only have to use less data for exchange, meaning you have more bandwidth, which is free for any other kind of process. So less internet requirement is there when you're using an application than when you're using a browser. That difference is there. Got it? I hope you got it. So that's another kind of an example on how this modern this whole booming is helping us with. And then you have your integration with social media, like how to apply existing functionalities to this social media. One of the best example I can say is LinkedIn, right? Yeah, I believe most of you are using LinkedIn and all. The thing here is that you have, so including this session, like this session is basically to help you improve yourself, and also it helps you to gain your certification, right? So these certifications, you can actually present it over there on your social media, which is basically telling everyone, I received this particular certification from this particular team. Let's say, for example, I was certified in DevAsk from Cisco, which provides you much more credibility when you're telling people about these automation, those kinds of stuff. Okay, so you can actually provide data, like integrate social media to different kinds of services or applications. Another example I can say is that in most of these mobile applications, you might have seen when you're trying to log in, there will be multiple options. Either you can create a user ID and password, or you can use your Google ID to log in, or your Facebook ID to log in. So this is again an integration to social media, which basically means you don't have to provide that application with all your data. Instead, you just have to link your social media over there. They will be exchanging the data between themselves, which again reduces your work. Okay, hope that's clear. And somebody saying something?
Yeah, I can understand.
Okay. Yeah, I'm able to hear you actually, but your voice is a bit down. Anything like, are you able to hear me? Okay. Seems like, so the people who are not actually able to hear me, you might have to. Okay, thank you, Sadhana.
Yeah, hello.
Yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I am audible now.
Yeah, you're audible now.
Actually, I have a question. Is we are using the cameras like IP cameras. So is this the cloud services are related to these cameras? Like if somewhere the support or something that like video management softwares.
Yeah,
we
you
are
can say
using.
that. Like you have multiple options. Like cloud services basically means we are using that cloud service to share information. That's it. But the thing you said, absolutely right. Like if you're using these internet-based cameras, that
Yeah,
is IP cameras and all, you're basically using that, and either you'll be having maybe a web application, or maybe you'll be having an actual application inside which you'll be getting the streaming from. All you have to do is provide these IP IDs and maybe some authorization credentials, uh, like user ID, password, something like that. And just by using that, you'll be able to connect to those. So yes, these are some of the like new applications when it comes to software development. Reason being, in earlier stage, like when we started with the CCTV and all, everything was done analogically. You'll be having a cable directly onto that, and it will be kind of like a coaxial cable, not even the Ethernet cable. Okay, so directly it will be connected to a particular set-top box, and from there you'll be able to display it inside maybe a TV or something like that. That has changed with the help of this software development. Like you'll be able to, you can just remotely access those cameras and all right now. That's a good example.
yeah. Like currently, Tata Play or and Airtel are providing these cameras. Means the cloud services over the
Yeah,
IP cameras here.
yeah, like a lot of teams like who are working with the internet are providing them. Reason being, it makes it much easier. Like you'll be having a particular connection. Uh, Maybe like for example, you said you Airtel. So if you're having their own camera, it will be much easier to install and use it. So these, yeah, those are good examples.
Yeah. So actually, I want to know how it process means how they deploy these services over the cloud. So is this related to this our in the SD-WAN curriculum?
Not exactly. You don't need SD-WAN for this service. So basically, what can be done here is that even if you're setting up these IP cameras and all, either they will be connected to a Wi-Fi network, or like an internet network, a system network with internet, or it will be connected to a like personal. If it's in a personal VPN or private network, it will be stored inside your own servers. And if it's connected to internet, what can be done is like you'll be from that internet, it will be directly uploaded to a private cloud storage, where a certain amount of memory will be or storage will be allotted to you. So this can be like 10 TB or 5 TB, something like that. And whenever this storage, like what's basically happening is that data collected by your camera is being sent to the modem, and from there to the internet, to wherever we are storing this data. That's it. So whenever a new data comes up, the old data gets removed. So basically, somewhere around 10 to 30 days, you'll be having backup data stored over there. Just storing data, that's it. Like when it comes to cloud, we have a lot of other kinds of applications. Like you might be familiar with AWS and all. I'm not sure like what level of people have joined in for this session. Like I can see, I was told that most of you are working professionals. So meaning you might have already worked with some of the services that we're going to discuss. Okay, even we'll be discussing things about our basic networking, like IP side and everything. So please bear with me. And from what you asked, what I can say is like this data basically be collected from a camera, and it will be sent into a router or a modem, something like that. And from there, it will be sent to internet, in where we'll be having a particular area or a storage area in which this data will be stored. And this particular user who has this camera will be also provided with a user ID and password. So he can either open a web application, provide a user ID and password, and he'll be accessing this cloud storage. Okay, where this data is being stored, and from there he'll be able to, view this particular set of data or that particular videos for different period of times. Hope you got it.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Okay, fine, fine. Just give me 2 minutes, guys. I'll just be back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that. So yes, as we were talking before that, we were talking about different applications and integrating this with social media, etc. And yes, this integration with social media really helps us to showcase our like talent. It helps you to share the data that you have with your peers, etc. And then when it comes to cloud service, basically for data sharing and processing requirement, like data sharing, like Dropbox or Google Cloud, all of this are basically some form of cloud service. And then you have your like let's say AWS or Google Cloud, which where you can basically run an entire OS and work over there. So these kind of data sharing and processing requirements, we can use cloud services. Then you have your free softwares and libraries, to like save cost in application and services rather than implementing everything from scratch. There are a lot of libraries and open source softwares which you can easily use instead of making this by yourself. These open source softwares basically means you have every right to use it, as well as you can make changes to that software without any issues. Unlike some of the paid softwares, if you're making some changes or making modes of that, it's punishable by law. But whereas these free softwares or libraries, you can use it, make changes to it, use it, customize it as per your requirement. So the plus point here is that you don't have to start from the basics to when you're like designing or creating a new software. Instead, like you can build on top of something that is already implemented, which again reduces a lot of your work. Okay, so libraries similar to that. Like you'll be having to do a particular function inside your software. So if an already a library exists online, you can just take that library and then just add it over here. So that entire function is completed. You don't have to create that particular set of codes again from by yourself. So these are some of the, let's say, new trends that actually happened inside our software development industry. So one of the main things that helped with this is API. So these APIs separate functionality into small building blocks. For example, web applications. They rely on web servers to store data, but use a web browser for presenting it. So a single page applications, like these web applications, are modern applications which dynamically load data on demand into one single web page. So this approach actually requires communication, which dynamically load data on demand onto a single web page. So this actually requires communication with web server, and likewise use of cloud services, software libraries, social media, etc., etc. So, for example, when it comes to API, let me just say, imagine you are at a restaurant, okay, and you are requesting, not requesting, my bad, and you are ordering some food that you saw on the menu, okay, to the waiter, right? And the waiter goes to the kitchen, tells the chef that you asked for this particular dish. Chef creates it, gives it back to the waiter. Waiter brings it and gives it to you. Correct. So the menu that you see, you can consider that as the options that you have in your application. And you are selecting one of these options. And this waiter is going to the who's basically acting as the medium between you and the chef, can be considered as API. So that's basically the job of API. It takes a request, takes it to the backend, gives it to the backend, receives the output, brings it back to you, and give it to you. So that's basically the work of an API. And the chef in this case will be basically be the backend of that particular software, where all this, let's say, information, everything is being stored. Okay, so I hope you got the functionality of API. It basically takes your request, takes it to the backend, receives the output depending upon your request, brings it back to you, and that's it. So with this software trends, the use of APIs is also spreading. Okay, so one of this reason more and more is that developers are relying on API is the fact that they allow faster prototyping and development of software. Okay, 1 second. This is DevNet, but API is part of DevNet. I hope that's clear. So like we will be using API a lot when it comes to our DevNet session, because that's our main thing that we're using for any kind of requests. Okay. So yes, so, and this topic is based upon API that we're going to discuss. That's fine. So yes, as I mentioned, right. So APIs actually allow you to simply use an existing service or an existing library to create a working prototype or even the final program without even having to implement that particular functionality yourself. Okay, so like basically this existing functionality or that particular library will be your backend, and you'll be using API to communicate with that particular set of services. And this API, sorry, and these APIs actually enable communication between computer systems or programs by specifying the details of how this information is being, let's say, exchanged, thereby basically facilitating code and functionality reuse. Whiteboard pen, yes, sure, definitely, we'll do that. For example, from our next example onwards, I'll try to use the whiteboard. No worries, Ravi. Just give me a second. So yes. So as I mentioned, for this, like you can have multiple forms or multiple set of interface, all of them using the same API itself or same backend, right? So imagine, okay, easier example will be Facebook itself. So imagine you have this Facebook, right? And this Facebook is like all the data regarding this Facebook and everything will be stored inside a, let's say, web server. That's basically where all the data is being stored, like on a server or a storage area. And you have front end, you have multiple front ends for this. You can have your web application, you can have your mobile application, and some other tools as possible if you're using some other kinds of devices. Okay, so this web application and mobile application, basically both of them are Facebook, right? Both of them are basically interface to the Facebook. So web application means that you'll be opening it on a browser. Mobile application means that you have an app for your device. The thing is, even though both interfaces are completely different, both of them will be requesting the data from one location itself, right? So how is that possible? So that possibility is thanks to our API. So whenever you're opening this particular thing on your web application, what happens is that a request, depending upon the URL you have given, a request is going to go from your browser to that particular web server. Okay, and that will be an API request. So once it reaches that server, that request, depending upon that request, this web server will be providing data to this web application. So since this is a browser, what happens is that it has to send the data that is requested by us. It has to send the format in which it has to be presented. It has to check the authentication. All those details has to be checked. But at the same time, when we are using a mobile application, that device is already authenticated. So you don't even have to use the username or password the second time that you're using this. Instead, an API request will be going from this mobile application to this web server. And this time what happens is that this server will be able to identify that request is coming from this mobile application, because the format of that particular API request will be different when it comes from this mobile application than when it was coming from the web application. Okay, so in this web application, it will be requesting, as I mentioned, authentication details, format, the data requested, all these things is required when it's coming from web application. At the same time, when it's coming from mobile, what happens is that it will only request the data that needs to be displayed, because inside this application itself, it will be having the format, the user ID and password that you entered earlier. Everything is already there and it's already authenticated. The only thing it requests is the data that needs to be presented. So that will be taken from the web server, taken back to the mobile application, presented to you. So it doesn't matter whatever kind of interface that you use. Depending upon your requirement, you can easily modify your API to get the data from your backend. Okay, so that's a plus point of actually using these APIs. Yes. Next, let's look into using the APIs itself. Right. So an increasing number of systems that expose its yes, that's right. If you want to save the credentials in the web browser, then it won't save like ask you the data next time. But at the same time, in some of the applications, you are able to save the data on the browser. And the next time when you want to join it, you have to select which credentials that you have to use. Right, that comes up. So the thing is like this data is not stored inside that application. Instead, the data is stored inside the browser. So that's a functionality of the browser and not your service, not Facebook. Facebook is not asking you to save the data. You're saving the data inside the browser only. But in the other case, what happens is that the application is Facebook itself, right? And inside that application, you're saving the credentials. So in browser, if you're checking your password, if you go to your settings and check your password manager, you'll be able to see a lot of different passwords added over there. And in some browsers case, those are not even encrypted. So I wouldn't suggest that. But at the same time, yes, you're right. You have the option to save the data, but it won't automatically go into that particular application. In some cases, I'm not saying every cases. I've seen in some browsers, you directly go to the web page and all. But other cases, if you're having, let's say, example, in some cases of LinkedIn and all, you'll be able to store the data, but you won't be automatically logged in. Instead, you'll be taken to the login page where your credentials are already filled up. You all you have to do is sign up, but you have to click sign up. So that option is there. Okay, and this data is not stored in by the application, only by the browser. So yes, moving on. Hope that was clear. Right. So using APIs. So as I was saying, an increasing number of systems that expose functionalities through APIs has enabled building more complex solutions and let's say driving automation and integration until unlike anything that we've seen earlier. So therefore, this using and building APIs has become a foundational skills for most software developers and all. So to use API effectively, we have to keep a few things in mind. So these are, first one, we have to design our software in a modular way. That basically means that you must be able to, let's say, create this application and everything so that it's kind of portable, like a particular module will be able to do one particular types of work. Then prototyping and testing this API integration. So that basically allows you to quickly, verify the feasibility of that particular chosen design, and it helps you to determine if that particular design meets the needs of that particular stakeholder and ensure that this integration keeps working over time, especially in case of different kinds of version upgrades and all. Okay. And then you have, let's say, there are a lot of APIs that rely on network communication. So it is important that you understand the kinds of, let's say, challenges or the things that you have to face when you're using a network. Like sometimes the network can be down, sometimes there can be a cable cut, or sometimes somebody might have plugged in a particular port wrong, right? So for all those different issues, we might have to set up different kinds of backup so that you can make sure that the service is not interrupted. And then API also make more complex software architectures possible. So like however to tackle, let's say, additional complexity, you must be familiar with the modular software design, which we mentioned earlier. And another thing is like distributed computing. So we had distributed computing a bit earlier as well, but at the same time, this API has made it much easier. Reason being, when you are having distributed computing, it means that you'll be able to divide one single applications into small modules, which is spread out over that entire network. For example, imagine that you have a network. Let me see, 1 second. I'll just set up the whiteboard so it will be a bit more easier to describe. Got it. So just add the whiteboard over here. Hope it's visible. So yes, yeah, it's not coming through there. Hope this is visible. So yes, as I was saying, distributed networking. We won't be doing a practical lab today, because first we have to get an idea about the whole thing. Labs come later. Okay, so it's because maybe towards Friday or something, we'll be starting with lab. So yes, when it comes to this distributed networking or distributed software design, you'll be having a network. Imagine that say a router or one, and then you have multiple servers. So you have multiple routers. So sorry, servers. This is server 1, server 2, and let's say server 3. And you have a particular system. You can imagine this as a system, so computer 1. And you have an application running inside your system. Oh, basically, you can say an interface you have on your computer 1. And the thing is, like, you can actually have an application divided into multiple pieces, doing different kinds of works and different kinds of location. For example, on server 1, you can have something that, like a particular part of that application that collects data. And on server 2, you can have a particular part of that application that, process that data into a particular format. Okay, change data into X format, some format. And then on server 3, you have something that collects all the data from server 1, server 2, and then, process that data. So you can collect the data over here and then send it to server 2 through the router, and then the data will be changed into this format, and from there it will be forwarded to server 3, where all the data is processed. And when the client 1 is requesting that data, what happens is that request will be going to server 3 and data will be provided. Okay, so having these applications divided into different area what it basically does is that it makes your work much easier. Not just your work, it makes the work that needs to be done on that particular process much easier, and it takes less time because the work is being divided into different servers or different resources. Okay, so and they are able to communicate with each other with the help of our API. So that's the thing, like you can actually divide the work of one application into small modules which are deployed over different servers. Okay, so that's a huge, it creates a huge impact when it comes to, let's say, creating an application. So that's, let's say, what we call by distributed computing. So this is just one single example. Okay, you can do a lot of different kinds of things with distributed system. You can have like multiple processors, like 20-30 processors running simultaneously on different devices, and from all that devices one system will be collecting the data and then making them like joining them together to provide you an output. So these kinds of things can happen. For one of the biggest examples I can say is that people working inside the graphic designing area chose to create a particular thing or to render a particular CGI frame. They require a lot of resources. So they'll be having multiple systems with GPUs and all running simultaneously to get a particular frame rendered for these animated movies or cinemas, etc. So they have a lot, they work a lot on these kinds of shared systems or distributed computing requirements. So for all of these purposes, we require API. Okay, and another example I can say is when it comes to the DevOps engineers. So that's the example that you can see over here. When it comes to automation of workflow, so you'll be having writing, you have to write the code, you have to build the application, then move on to deployment and after testing. So you have all this work, everything can be completely automated. So once you create the code, you have the option to use different kinds of VCS like Git, GitLab, etc. You can use that to actually automate that particular workflow. What basically happens is that building that application from the code, testing those code and deploying that particular application, everything can be done with the help of automation here. So until it reaches deployment, everything will be checked and all kinds of tests. So automated tests will be there, security tests will be there. So dynamic security tests, all these kinds of tests will be completely done automatically. All you have to do is provide them with the required testing libraries. Okay. So this is commonly used as part of a process that is an application build process, which is known as CICD method. So these CICD pipelines, the full form is continuous integration, continuous deployment. So this process is basically used to provide better versions of a particular systems much faster to the clients. Okay, so you'll be continuously working on that particular system, how to upgrade it, how to update it, all those details. The only thing you will have to do is write the codes. Once that's done, the building, testing, everything is completely automated. When it comes to CI/CD pipelines, we are going to look into that later, but that will be a topic that we'll be discussing. Okay. So when it comes to this API, the main purpose is to expose the functionality, so the documentation is at least as important as this implementation. So when it comes to this API, we have to make sure to keep a clear-cut documentation to make sure that whatever changes that we have made to that application, whatever things that we did into that particular API ever since it was created, all this data is stored somewhere. Okay, only by looking at that later we'll be able to make some different updates or something like that. So developers highly rely on API documentation to provide informations like, let's say, what functions or endpoints need to be called, or what kind of data needs to be provided as a parameter for like what kind of output that you have to receive. or let's say how to encode these different types of protocol messages or data objects, etc. So yes, so when it comes to this API, there are different types of data formats that we keeps on using. So these kinds of data formats, they are also known as data serialization languages. Some of you might be familiar with at least one or two of this. These are YAML, JSON, and XML. So I think XML might, sorry, JSON and XML might be familiar. YAML, I'm not sure. Some of you might be knowing it. There are many different types of data formats used for our applications to communicate with a wide range of APIs that is available on the internet. So each format, like each one of these format, YAML, JSON, XML, etc., each one of these format represents a syntax coding. That syntax coding data that could be read by another machine, but in such a way that it is easy to understand for like us as well, as users or humans. So for instance, let's say if you want to use an API to configure the Cisco router, so you have to check which data types are supported by that particular API. Okay, so you're only able to use these data types over there as long as the API that you're using supports that particular language. Okay, so once you find out what languages are supported, you can start writing a request to be handled by that API, and that has an effect on our router configuration. So an API server basically understands your written code and translate that particular code into instructions that are suitable for your router or switch to process and create a particular action. Okay, so whatever that you're writing using YAML, JSON, XML, this API will be taking that, converting it into different types of instructions that needs to be added to the router and switch and all. So when it comes to routers and all, there are a lot of different kinds of things that has to be done. For example, decide what kind of protocol it has to run in, like RIP, EIGRP, or OSPF, etc. So it can be decided. So these data, everything can be programmed inside any one of these languages. Okay. So yes, these are some of the most common ones that we'll be using and discussing during our session. And these are the ones which we mostly use for our Cisco requirements. Okay, so YAML, this YAML, the full form is a bit weird, but it's actually meaning is YAML ain't markup language. So this is not a markup language. We have a reason for this because XML is a markup language. Okay, its full form is actually extensible markup language, where we have E in first, but we are using XML to represent it. Okay, so extensible markup language, that is a full form of XML. Then we have JavaScript, which basically means JSON, which basically means JavaScript object notation. So these are the full forms of these three languages that we are going to use. And all of them has like a lot of basic common use cases. I think I have a slide for that as well. Sorry, my bad. So yes, I'll just say that. So when it comes to XML, JSON, and YAML, all of them has their own specific use cases. For example, let's say XML. So XML is something that we are using to apply these schemas to these different systems. For example, let's say XML has been recognized many times as a hefty, but at the same time, like not much humanly readable kind of a format. So this XML is, let's say, verbose redundant, if you want to say it like that. And it's complex to use because it has a tag format which is not easy to be read by humans. So it is mostly used in exchange of highly structured data. Data like how you might have to store data in a hierarchical method, or you might have to store that data in a tree or a graph format, something like that. So in those kinds of cases, we use XML. And like most of the time, I would say like 95% of the time, this XML is used for machine-to-machine communication requirements. Like we won't be a part of that particular communication. So when you're talking about programming in Java and all, XML is widely used. JSON is also used. We'll come back to that. So as I mentioned, XML is highly structured. It's system friendly. Like for computers and everything, it's much easier to understand. But when it comes to people, it's not that user friendly. So for machine-to-machine communication, we use XML. Then we have JSON. So JSON is serving as an alternative to XML because it is often smaller and easier to read when it comes to JSON, that is, okay. And it is mostly used for transmitting data between a server and a web page. So kind of like closer to us than XML was, okay, because the communication is between a server and a web page. Web page is basically our interface, remember? So in that case, it's kind of sending the data, like communication between us and server. So it's closer to us, but not exactly the most closest. And JSON also is a bit hard, but when compared to XML, it is much easier to comprehend that JSON coding. We'll be seeing a few examples next, no worries. So yes, so JSON syntax is pretty much the same as our JavaScript programming language. Therefore, you can very easily convert this JSON data into your JavaScript objects when you're using that particular programming language. Therefore, you can easily convert it into JavaScript. So JSON syntax is also, let's say, useful for YAML. The same YAML you can see over here. It's also useful for YAML because JSON is basically kind of like a subset for YAML. So like, let's say parsing JSON files with the YAML parser is very much possible, and it is very much intuitive as well. So all of this has different types of syntaxes, but at the same time, you're able to basically store the same kind of data over there as well. So JSON is basically used for communication between server web page, and you also use JSON to set up configuration files as well. And if you're building your, like let's say, first API and you are a non-developer, in that case, YAML would be the way to go when choosing which data format to use. The reason being, YAML is basically made for us more than the system. Like it's made for the people who are starting to write code from scratch and all. XML and JSON are mostly for our programming code to be a bit more machine readable. So like that's basically why we either convert this YAML into one of these formats later. So YAML is used in many kinds of configuration files today because it's very similar to indentation styles that we follow in Python. So YAML file is much easier for a communication requirements when you are using Python because 99% of the time we have practically the same format. We'll be following the same format regarding indentation, white spaces, all those kinds of things. So these are basically the three types of data serialization languages. So today was a basic introduction to the session. And I think we are time on 10 o'clock. Yes, so that will be it for today. Tomorrow we'll continue with this data formats and look a bit more into how we are using these data types for serialization, deserialization, how we are converting these data types, like the data stored inside this data types into Python objects, etc. Those kinds of things we'll be discussing on the next day. And for this session, these three, like YAML, JSON, and XML, will be basically the types of data serialization languages that we are going to use. And when it comes to programming languages, we are going to use Python. So, like, if you want, you are like welcome to go through other Python formats or study courses as well. You will be getting the recording, but this particular PPT, I don't think I'll be able to share. I'll have to check this. So this is an online PPT. Okay, so let me check if it's possible. If not, you'll be getting the recording anyway. You can access the recording inside your portal. Okay. So yes, that's practically it for today. So all of you just do one thing. Make sure to access